Hey bookworms, and welcome back to another Spooktube video, the series on my channel where I review my favorite horror novels throughout October. And today we're going to be talking about Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Now, I can already guess that some of you are thinking, Neverwhere? That's not even proper horror. Why isn't she talking about Coraline instead? Well guys, I thought long and hard about it, and yes, I read Coraline, I love this book, and it's indeed more proper horror than Neverwhere, but I always keep coming back to Neverwhere because this series is about books that have a special significance to me. And as much as I love Coraline, Neverwhere wins in this case. So in order to answer the question, if it's not horror, what is it? I need to tell you what this book is about. So we follow Richard, an underwhelming, nerdy, average guy who one day stops to help an injured young girl he sees on the street. A girl that no one else seemed to notice. As he tries to bring her back to health, he discovers that first, her entire family was murdered and she's running away from the murderers, and second, that ever since he stopped to help her, Richard also became somewhat invisible. It's not like people can't see him, but they more ignore his presence unless he talks directly to them, and even then they quickly forget about him. Richard then joins this girl, her name is Dor, and together they venture into the underside of London, a dark, magical place for others who fell between the cracks, and they try to find out who murdered Dor's family and why, and if Richard can somehow go back to his previous normal life. I actually have an interesting history with Neverwhere. I read it for the first time when I was about 16 years old, and I actually really disliked it. I think it was my first Neil Gaiman novel too, and for some reason I wasn't impressed. But years later, for some reason, I convinced myself to reread it, and ever since it's one of my favorites. This novel is the quintessential Neil Gaiman novel. It's dark, imaginative, creepy, more than actually horror scary, but have some very dark themes. And most importantly, it combines these elements with a very British sense of humor, which I love. Neil Gaiman is kind of bookworld's Tim Burton, and I mean it as a compliment, like Edward Scissorhands Burton, not Dark Shadows Burton. It's rather difficult to combine comedy with other genres successfully. Most of the time the comedy can ruin the gravity of any seriousness or any sense of dread, but Neil Gaiman manages to do it wonderfully. Despite having a goofy character like Richard and other rather silly characters, even the murderers who are always on their tail are somewhat theatrical. The book still manages to have some really spooky elements, and there's even a moment in the book I'd say is properly scary, and it has to do with crossing a bridge. It's hard for me to put a finger on my favorite Neil Gaiman characteristic. I love his imagination, but also how he reveals his worlds to us, so his writing and wording definitely deserve a mention. But I feel that the world building here is just so cool and so unique. The underside of London is like a ghost of the real London. All the real places are still there, especially the tube station. There's a special significance to the tube station here. But everything is just different and darker. There are people living kind of separately from society there. Some look like strange homeless people you sometimes see on the streets, and others look like a strange version of characters you'll see in an average medieval-style fantasy novel. Speaking of homeless people, I felt that despite some lighthearted moments in the book, a message that maybe only adults can understand from it has to do with life choices, how we see success, and how we treat undesirable people around us. Many of the underworld's inhabitants exist in real London as homeless people, people we choose not to see or we immediately judge as lazy drag addicts and such. And I feel that this message is for adults because only after you leave your parents' house, after you have to start working in order to live, this relationship between how much you earn and how much you can afford, what we call adulting, only then you can really realize just how flimsy everything is. When I was younger, I would imagine how my life would look like in my 30s. I'm sure you thought about it too. And perhaps I would have thought that a person who rents an apartment instead of owning a house and work in retail, which all are true to me, isn't the best sign of success. It's only later when I started struggling, I realized that my situation right now, physically and mentally, is so much better than what I could have dreamed of in my lowest points. I feel I digress, and I feel I start discussing things from my personal life I don't want to share on YouTube yet. So back to my point. We as a society have certain standards, and I feel that we look down on people who sometimes, with no fault of their own, ended up in the real life's underworld and became invisible, and many times they deserve more from us. Okay, that felt a little heavy. Now let's go back to Neverwhere and conclude this video. Neverwhere is my favorite Neil Gaiman book, closely followed by Good Omens, which is a collaboration, so it's not 100% in the same category. It's a dark urban fantasy written by such a talented, imaginative mind, and it's also suitable for younger readers, even though it's technically for adults. So if on one hand you have kids, or maybe you are young yourself, and you want to read a book that's not from the kids' shelf, or on the other hand you like fantasy but is tired of stupid YA novels, I definitely recommend Neverwhere. However, with this recommendation, I also have two caveats, kind of. Number one is for those of you who read other Gaiman books, this book is not American Gods, okay? American Gods is a lot heavier, reminds me of his writing style in Sandman, and I feel that people who are American Gods fans will find the style here too light. Personally, I really disliked American Gods, so I am a lot happier with the style of Neverwhere, which is, as far as I'm read, is more of the dominant Neil Gaiman style. So if you have read American Gods, don't expect any similarities except some dark imagination. Secondly, I'm only saying it because I feel I have to. I think some people will be expecting an action-filled quest race. It's not. It's a lot more about learning about yourself and a new world than chasing some MacGuffin. So you might feel this book is slightly slower than you'd like. I personally find this book a page-turner, but I feel like I need to say it for the action fast-paced fans. And that's it for my review on Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and if you did, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to my channel, if you dare. Also, write down in the comment section what is your favorite Neil Gaiman book. Guys, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next week with the last Spooktube video. Bye bye.